take a look now. Let's take a look at verses 5 through 8. 5 through 8, Craig.
Those who live according to the sinful nature have their mind set on what that nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires. The mind of sinful man is death, but the mind controlled by the Spirit is life and peace. The sinful mind is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those controlled by the sinful nature cannot please God.
Okay, so now he's made a summary statement before this. Now he begins to, I said flesh before, but now he's going to flesh it out. He's going to tease it apart to help break it down into its components so that people truly understand what he's saying in order to drive the point home. Now this morning, I talked about different mindsets. Okay, well, Paul is talking about some different mindsets here. Two different mindsets that Paul is comparing here, or contrasting. What are those? Those fixed on the Spirit, so the mindset of the Spirit, and the mindset of the flesh, or sinful man, or sinful nature, or sinful flesh, whichever one you want to call it. Paul uses that word interchangeably. Okay? Two completely different mindsets. Why? He used a word in there that's extremely important for us to understand, and I think that we need to learn to hold on to. He says the mind what? The mind that is what? Controlled. Controlled. All right, Paul chose this word specifically to drive the point home. If you ask somebody when they're driving the car, if you say to them, who's in control? If there's 4 people in the car, who's the person in control? Guy behind the wheel or woman behind the wheel, right? Yes? Okay. I didn't mean that to sound like a trick question. I really didn't. So, Paul says, okay, it's time for you to stop. I've given you some information now. Now what you need to do is you need to be looking at yourself and asking, who's in the driver's seat in your life? Who's in the driver's seat? Who's in the driver's seat in your spiritual life? Is it the sinful nature? Or is it the spirit of life? If it's the sinful nature, Paul says that in verse 7 that human beings are actually hostile toward God. Hostile toward God. That is a powerful picture that he's drawing. Can you imagine if this was the first time you came to a church and you heard Paul preaching this message and he was talking to you and saying, oh, by the way, welcome. Did you know that you're hostile toward God, the all-supreme being who could just, poof, you could be gone? I give Paul a lot of credit. We are. We are prone by nature to sin, to separation from God, because we were born into original sin through Adam's sin. It was passed on from generation to generation. And until we come to know who Jesus Christ is, until the Spirit has worked in our heart and in our lives, we continue to act in a way that is completely hostile to God. We will continue to sin and keep doing what is wrong 24/7 until the Spirit awakens in us an understanding that there is a difference from what we were doing. Until that point, you could literally say that people really don't know for sure what they're doing. But this is an important point because it's something that has to do with a little bit about what we talked about this morning, about where that seed falls. Okay? If you're one of those people with the closed mindset, the Spirit comes to reveal, you need to be willing to receive And you need to take time to try and understand. Through Christ, our lives are changed. We realize that we are sinful, fallen people, and then we strive each and every day. We should be striving each and every day to grow more and more into the likeness of what God wanted us to be when He first created human beings. Through the sanctifying work of the Holy Spirit, each and every day, we can be made more holy each day. If we are controlled by the sinful nature? No, by the Spirit of life. Because left to our own, and Arlene, your question is really well timed here, left to our own, it says that we're guilty of insubordination. If you look at verse 8 and verse 7, we're hostile toward God. We refuse to be subject or in submission to Him. In the military, that would be insubordination toward a superior officer, right? Okay, and it says that by ourselves, because we are sinful, fallen people, we can't do anything to please God. We can't do anything to please God. And if that's the case, what hope do we have? We wouldn't have any hope at all. The mindset. Who is in control? It's important for us to remember that we are still fallen human beings. Even once we come to know Christ, it doesn't mean that that battle is over, that the sinful nature is gone from our life. It is a constant battle, and that's why I mentioned earlier that I believe we go through seasons, because there are times when the enemy will press the attack. And sometimes we do stumble, and sometimes we do fall. And it's passages like this that remind us when we find ourselves, why does this keep happening? Why am I not getting anywhere? When the personal pronoun I is still at the beginning of that sentence, it's a pretty good clue that we've already missed the mark. We've got to learn, and it's not easy. I don't ever mean to make this sound like it's an easy thing. But we need to learn to surrender ourselves to God and to the leading of His Spirit each and every day. The more we do it, the more it will become more routine for us, but it's never going to be 100% easy. Okay, let's move on to verse 9.
You, however, are controlled not by the sinful nature, but by the Spirit, if the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, he does not belong to Christ.
Okay, now he's talking also of not just being controlled, but God takes it to another level. All right, He is not just saying, I'll control you like you're puppets on a string. No, He takes it further than that. What does He say that's significant in this verse that makes a delineation between the fact that we're not just puppets as Christians?
You have to be controlled by the Spirit of Christ before you can have a natural bent to do on your own, then, so to speak, the thing that's right.
Okay,